The chief executive officer announced our engagement because someone inside his company was trying to destroy him, and I was the only person in the room who had accidentally seen how. I was holding a silver tray with 6 cups of coffee when Adrian Blackwood looked past 300 investors, reporters, and board members and said my name into a microphone. Not Vanessa Whitmore's name. Not the woman standing beside him in a white designer suit, smiling as though the future had already been signed and notarized. Mine, Claire Bennett, the temporary barista from the lobby cafe. For 1 second, nobody moved. The espresso machine hissed behind the service doors. A spoon struck the edge of a porcelain cup. Somewhere near the front row, a camera shutter clicked once, then stopped. I stood beneath a crystal chandelier with the tray balanced against my left palm, wondering whether exhaustion had finally caused me to imagine things. I had been awake since 5 that morning. I had worked the breakfast rush, attended an online accounting lecture during my break, and spent the afternoon carrying coffee into rooms where people discussed numbers larger than anything I would earn in 10 lifetimes. Maybe I had misunderstood him. Then Adrian raised one hand and pointed directly at me. My fiancée is standing right there. Every face in the ballroom turned. The tray suddenly felt heavier. Heat climbed from my collar to my cheeks as reporters twisted in their seats and cameras swung toward me. Vanessa's smile remained perfectly still, but her eyes changed. Cold. Precise. The kind of look that could remove a person from a room without anyone seeing the door open. Adrian stood at the center of the stage in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car. He did not smile. He never smiled in public. I knew that because I had served him coffee for 11 months, 5 mornings a week, and in all that time he had treated emotion like an expense his company could not justify. Black coffee. No sugar. No conversation. Most mornings, he barely looked at my name badge. Now he was calling me his fiancée in front of every major financial reporter in New York. My fingers tightened beneath the tray. 1 cup rattled against its saucer. Claire, my manager whispered from behind the curtain. His voice sounded terrified, as though I had personally interrupted the stock market. Go to him. I looked at Adrian again. He was watching me with an expression I could not read, but there was something beneath his usual control. Not affection, not confidence, urgency. 3 days earlier, I had seen the same tension through the glass wall of conference room 42. I had been delivering a carafe of coffee when I noticed Owen Price, Blackwood Global's chief financial officer, speaking quietly with a catering employee near the private entrance. Owen handed him a cream-colored envelope. The employee slipped it into his jacket and switched 2 place cards on the conference table. It might have meant nothing. Wealthy executives exchanged envelopes every day in that building. Assistants moved seats. Meetings changed without warning. Then the employee removed the water glass at Adrian's chair and replaced it with another glass from a separate tray. I paused in the doorway. He saw me. I saw him. Neither of us spoke. Before the meeting began, I moved the glass away and replaced it with an unopened bottle of water from the service cart. I told myself I was being cautious. I told myself I was probably being ridiculous. 20 minutes later, the meeting ended early. Security closed the 42nd floor. By evening, the catering employee's badge had been deactivated. No one asked me what I had seen. No one except Adrian, who appeared at the cafe the next morning at 6:15, long before his usual arrival. Did you touch my place setting yesterday? He asked. No greeting. No explanation. I should have lied. Instead, I said, I changed your water. His eyes narrowed. Why? Because someone else changed it first. He stared at me for several seconds, then ordered his usual coffee and walked away. That had been the entire conversation. Until now. I stepped out from behind the service station. The ballroom seemed impossibly large. Every click of my shoes against the marble floor echoed beneath the silence. The people nearest me moved aside, not because of who I was, but because Adrian had pointed at me. That was how power worked around him. He did not need to touch the room. The room rearranged itself. As I approached the stage, reporters began shouting questions. When did the relationship begin? Claire, how long have you known each other? What does this mean for the Whitmore merger? I nearly laughed at the first question. Our relationship had begun with an extra shot of espresso and a name he had never bothered to use. Adrian descended the steps before I reached them. Up close, he looked exactly as he always did. Composed. Immaculate. Impossible to interrupt. But his right hand was closed tightly at his side, and the pulse in his throat moved too fast. What are you doing? I whispered. He took the tray from me and passed it to a stunned assistant without looking away. Saving my company. By ruining my life. Temporarily complicating it. We have never even had lunch. That makes the story cleaner. I stared at him. That sentence makes no sense. It will. He reached into his jacket and removed a small velvet box. The room erupted. Questions crashed over one another as camera flashes filled my vision. Adrian opened the box, revealing a simple diamond ring. Elegant. Expensive. Entirely impossible. I stepped back. Do not put that on me. His voice dropped low enough that only I could hear. Someone on my board believes they have already won. I need them to believe I made a move they did not anticipate. Then announce a new business plan. This is faster. Find another woman. His gaze moved toward Vanessa, then toward Owen, who stood beside the stage with one hand resting calmly in his pocket. Owen was smiling. Not surprised. Interested. That frightened me more than the cameras. Adrian noticed me looking. You saw something 3 days ago, he said. The person who searched your employee record afterward believes you saw more than you did. The noise around us seemed to fade. I remembered the catering employee's face when he caught me watching him. I remembered Owen's envelope. I remembered the security doors closing on the 42nd floor. Who searched my record? I cannot answer that here. Then stop making announcements about my life. For the first time, something almost human crossed his face. Regret, perhaps. It vanished quickly. I need you beside me for the next 10 minutes. After that, you may hate me in private. I already hate you in public. One corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile. Then he offered his hand instead of taking mine. The distinction was small, but I noticed it. I placed my hand in his because every camera in the ballroom was watching and because Owen's smile had not changed. Adrian did not slide the ring onto my finger. He placed the open box in my palm and gently closed my fingers around it. To the cameras, it looked intimate. To me, it felt like evidence. He turned toward the audience and placed one steady hand near the center of my back, close enough to guide me, but not force me forward. We will answer questions at a later date, he announced. For now, the board meeting will continue as scheduled. Reporters shouted louder. Vanessa walked off the stage without looking at either of us. Owen remained where he was, smiling as though he had just discovered a new variable in an equation. Adrian leaned closer. The scent of coffee still clung to my uniform. His voice was barely more than breath. Do not open the box until we are alone. I looked down at the velvet case trapped inside my hand. Why? His eyes moved toward Owen. Because the ring is not the reason I chose you. The moment the ballroom doors closed behind us, Adrian released my hand, and the entire performance disappeared from his face. No warmth. No public tenderness. Only calculation. Marcus Reed, the head of security, walked several steps ahead while two assistants cleared the private hallway without asking questions. The carpet beneath my shoes was so thick that it swallowed every sound, but I could still hear reporters behind us shouting my name. My name. A name Adrian Blackwood had ignored for almost a year had become breaking news in less than 60 seconds. I held the velvet box against my chest. Where are we going? I asked. Somewhere without reporters, Adrian said. You should have considered that before announcing my personal life to half of Manhattan. He pressed the elevator button. I considered it. That makes it worse. The doors opened, revealing mirrored walls and a ceiling glowing with soft white light. Marcus entered first. Adrian waited for me. I stayed in the hallway. I am not getting into a private elevator with a man who just invented our engagement. His eyes settled on mine. There are 12 security cameras in this corridor. Good. They can record me refusing. Marcus looked down, but not before I caught the smallest movement at the corner of his mouth. Adrian stepped out of the elevator and lowered his voice. The person monitoring our reactions needs to believe you are cooperating voluntarily. Why? Because people become careless when they believe their plan is still working. You are using me as bait. No, his answer came too quickly. Then what am I? For the first time since the announcement, he hesitated. A witness I cannot protect from a distance. The elevator chimed again. I should have walked away. I should have crossed the lobby, removed my apron, and taken the subway home to the apartment I shared with Lily. But Owen had smiled when Adrian put the ring box in my hand. He had not looked confused. He had looked entertained. That smile followed me into the elevator. The ride to the 68th floor lasted less than a minute. Adrian stood beside me without speaking. His reflection appeared in every mirrored wall, for versions of the same controlled man surrounding me. I watched his hands instead of his face. His right thumb pressed repeatedly against the side of his index finger. A nervous habit, small enough that no reporter would notice. I did. The doors opened into a silent executive floor lined with dark wood, glass offices, and windows overlooking the city. From that height, yellow taxis looked like moving sparks. People became dots. Problems probably did too. Marcus led us into Adrian's office and locked the door. Adrian removed his jacket, placed it across the back of a chair, and looked toward the velvet box. "Please open it." The word "please" sounded recently learned. I set the box on his desk. "You first." Adrian studied me for a long moment, then opened it. Beneath the ring was a thin black memory card no larger than my thumbnail. "What is on that?" I asked. "Security footage from 3 days ago." "From the conference room?" "From the service corridor outside it." The original recording was deleted from the company system 17 minutes after the meeting. A cold sensation moved through me. "Then how do you have a copy?" "Marcus maintains an independent security archive." Marcus looked over his shoulder. "Only when Mr. Blackwood believes someone inside the company is interfering with official systems." "How long has he believed that?" I asked. 8 months, Adrian answered. He touched a control on his desk, and a monitor rose silently from the polished surface. The video appeared without sound. I saw the hallway outside conference room 42. The timestamp showed 3 days earlier at 9:14 in the morning. Owen entered the frame carrying a folder. The catering employee followed. They spoke for less than 30 seconds. Owen passed him the cream-colored envelope. My stomach tightened. Then I appeared at the end of the corridor with the coffee carafe in my hand. I watched my recorded self slow down. Owen noticed me. His expression changed for only a fraction of a second. "He knew I saw them," I whispered. "He knew you saw an exchange," Adrian said. "He does not know how much you understood." The video continued. Owen walked away. The catering employee entered the conference room. I remained outside, pretending to check the order sheet. "Why did you change my water?" Adrian asked. "I already told you. Someone else changed it first. Most employees would have ignored it. Most employees probably do not spend their nights studying fraud examination." His gaze sharpened. "You know about the missing retirement money." It was not a question. I looked at him. "How do you know that?" He opened another file on the monitor. My employee photograph appeared beside my education records, work schedule, and activity on the company email system. "You investigated me. I verified whether you were connected to Owen. Those are the same thing when the person doing it owns the building." He opened a draft message I had written 2 weeks earlier on my company account, but never sent. The subject line read, "Irregular transfers from employee retirement accounts." My lungs forgot how to work. That was saved in my draft folder. "The account belongs to the company," he said. "That does not make reading it right." His expression changed slightly. "No, it does not." The admission surprised me more than an argument would have. "You found 6 transfers routed through consulting companies," he continued. "I found patterns. I did not have proof. You found more during your lunch breaks than my internal auditors found in 6 months." His voice remained level, but something beneath it had changed. Respect, perhaps, or concern. "Why did you never send the message?" he asked. I looked toward the windows. The city stretched below us, bright and distant, as though ordinary life existed somewhere beyond the glass. "Because my father reported financial misconduct when I was 16. 2 weeks later, the company ended his firm's contract. 6 months later, we lost our house. Everyone called him brave until bravery became expensive." Adrian said nothing. I turned back toward him. I wanted evidence before I put my name on anything. Owen discovered that someone was reviewing the accounts. "How?" "The access history showed which reports were opened and in what order. Those reports were available to employees." "Yes, but you opened the same reports that an investigator would compare." Marcus placed a tablet on the desk. It displayed login times, document names, and access locations. My lunch breaks had been turned into a map. "After the conference room incident," Adrian said, "someone accessed your personnel file, your home address, and the name listed as your emergency contact." Lily's name appeared on the screen. I stopped breathing. "Remove her information." "It has already been moved to a restricted system," Marcus said. "Only 3 people can access it now." "You do not get to use her name," I told Adrian. My voice came out quieter than I expected. Adrian moved around the desk, but stopped several feet away. He did not reach for me. That is why I made the announcement. You could have warned me. A warning might have changed your behavior before I understood who was watching. I am afraid. I know. His honesty landed harder than reassurance would have. He picked up the ring and placed it beside the memory card. The board expected me to announce a merger with Whitmore Holdings. Owen believes that merger will limit my control of the company and bury the irregular accounts inside a larger financial system. By choosing you publicly, I interrupted the timeline. I also made any retaliation against you much more visible, while Marcus placed formal security around you and your sister. You made me famous to make an attack harder to hide. Visibility is not protection by itself, he said. It gives us time while the security team does the rest. I looked at the ring, then at the monitor showing Lily's name. What happens when people learn the engagement is fake? Adrian's expression became still again. We make certain they do not learn it until the investigation is complete. He opened a drawer and removed a contract. My name was already printed on the first page. Beneath it were the words Confidential Public Relationship Agreement. I stared at the signature line. You prepared this before the press conference. Yes. You knew you were going to choose me. Yes. Before you asked me. I did not expect you to agree immediately. Then what did you expect? Adrian met my eyes. I expected you to refuse loudly enough that everyone would believe I had finally met someone I could not control. I stared at the contract as though it might explain why my name had been printed before I ever entered the ballroom. It did not. The paper was thick, cream-colored, and probably expensive enough to have its own insurance policy. My full legal name sat beneath Adrian Blackwood's in clean black type. Claire Bennett. Seeing it there made the situation feel less like a misunderstanding and more like a trap someone had prepared with excellent stationery. You expected me to refuse, I said. Yes. Then why prepare an agreement? Because I also expected you to ask questions. You seem very confident about knowing me for a man who barely acknowledged me for 11 months. His gaze moved briefly to the cafe badge pinned to my apron. I knew your name. You never used it. That is not the same thing. To the person being ignored, it feels exactly the same. Silence filled the office. Marcus stood near the door with his hands folded in front of him, watching us with the patience of a man who had witnessed Adrian lose arguments only in theory. Adrian pulled out a chair. Will you please sit down? That sounded painful. It was unfamiliar. I sat, not because he had won, but because my knees had begun to feel unreliable. Adrian took the chair across from me instead of returning behind his desk. That surprised me. The desk was his fortress. Without it between us, he looked less like the leader of a global corporation and more like a tired man who had not slept properly in years. He opened the agreement to the first page. The arrangement lasts until the investigation is complete, with a maximum term of 12 months. No, you have not read it. I heard 12 months. 6 months might not be enough to complete an independent audit. A fiancé who continues working behind a coffee counter will also attract questions. You will be placed on paid protective leave. My hands went still. You do not get to remove me from my own life. The press is already downstairs. Your home address may be published within hours. Returning to the cafe immediately would expose you and your coworkers to constant attention. That is a problem you created. Yes. Another direct admission. He was learning quickly, or the day had finally exhausted his defenses. The leave will be temporary, he continued. Your position will remain available when this ends. I do not want to be financially dependent on you. The agreement includes compensation. I turned the page. The number made me stop. $250,000. My first thought was Lily's medical payment plan. My second was tuition. My third was how much I hated that Adrian had studied my employee hardship application closely enough to choose a number that would make me hesitate. You read my confidential human resources file. Marcus reviewed it while assessing whether financial pressure could be used against you. That is a polished way to describe invading my privacy. Yes, Adrian said. It is. I closed the agreement. No, the amount is negotiable. That is not why I said no. Then tell me why. Because every page assumes my cooperation can be purchased. Most business agreements involve compensation. This is not only a business agreement. It involves my name, my family, and the way the entire country will judge me. He leaned back slightly. What would make it acceptable? Nothing makes what you did acceptable. What would make the next step acceptable? I studied him. It was the first useful question he had asked all day. No layoffs among the 47 cafe, custodial, and maintenance employees listed in the restructuring plan while the investigation is active, unless someone is dismissed for documented misconduct. His expression hardened. That is unrelated. It is entirely related. You are asking me to help protect this company. The people who clean the offices, prepare the food, and keep the building running should not lose their jobs so executives can make a quarterly report look better. You reviewed the restructuring plan. It was attached to the financial statements. That document was 86 pages. I read quickly. Adrian glanced at Marcus. Marcus gave the smallest shrug. Their positions will be protected for 12 months, Adrian said. Put it in writing. Agreed. I continued. Second, you tell me everything connected to Owen, the missing retirement funds, and the conference room incident that affects my choices. You do not decide what I am allowed to know simply because the truth is inconvenient. Some information may be protected by law. Then explain the legal restriction instead of hiding behind it. He considered that. Agreed. Third, no touching in public without permission. His eyebrows lifted slightly. We will need to appear convincing. You can appear convincing while respecting boundaries. Holding hands. Ask first. A hand at your back? Ask first. A public kiss? No, that might create questions. Then your plan needs better writers. Marcus covered a cough with his fist. Adrian looked at him. Marcus became professionally silent. I turned to the final page. Fourth, when I say this ends, it ends. No financial penalty. No lawsuit. No attempt to damage my career. Adrian did not answer. Outside the windows, afternoon light moved across Manhattan, turning the glass buildings gold. A helicopter crossed the river in the distance. I waited. Ending the public arrangement without notice could increase the security risk, he finally said. Then the security plan continues separately. The engagement ends when I decide I cannot continue. Protection will remain until the identified threat is resolved. Put that in writing too. Protection is not ownership. His thumb pressed against his index finger. Once. Twice. You planned this performance before speaking to me, I said. You prepared the ring, the agreement, the story, and the cameras. You control companies, buildings, schedules, and probably the temperature in this office. But you do not control me. His eyes lifted. There was no anger in them. Only something more dangerous because it looked almost like admiration. Adrian called legal counsel into a secure conference line. He dictated every condition without softening my language. 10 minutes later, a revised agreement appeared on the monitor. Marcus printed 2 copies. Adrian and I reviewed the changes, initialed every amended page, and signed the final version. You are still free to refuse, he said before I touched the pen. I looked at Lily's name on the tablet, then at the memory card beneath the ring. If I sign, my sister remains outside the public story. Completely. My address remains private. Yes. The cafe staff keep their jobs. You have my signature. I signed Claire Bennett beneath his name. The sound of the pen moving across paper seemed louder than the reporters downstairs. Adrian closed the agreement. May Marcus drive you home to collect what you need? Yes. Thank you. I stood and removed my cafe badge, placing it on his desk. Adrian looked at it as though I had returned something important. One more thing, I said. You are afraid I will leave. No, his answer was soft this time. Honest enough to make me pause. He picked up the velvet box and placed it in my hand again. I am afraid you will give me a reason to want you to stay. By the time Marcus drove me home, my face was already on television screens across the city. Reporters stood outside my apartment building, their camera lights turning the wet sidewalk white against the evening rain. Marcus did not slow down. He drove past them, entered through a secured parking garage on the next block, and brought me upstairs through a connected service corridor. Lily was sitting cross-legged on our living room floor with her laptop open and a bowl of cereal balanced on one knee. She looked at me, looked at the velvet ring box in my hand, then looked back at the screen where a news anchor was discussing my mysterious romance with Adrian Blackwood. Please tell me you did not get engaged during your lunch break, she said. It was technically before lunch. Claire, it is complicated. The news says you have been secretly dating for 8 months. The news also says I attended boarding school in Switzerland. Lily narrowed her eyes. You hate cold weather. That is the least inaccurate part of the story. I told her enough to keep her cautious, but not enough to terrify her. I said there was a company investigation. I said Adrian needed my cooperation because I had witnessed something important. I said the engagement was temporary and governed by a written agreement. I did not mention that someone had accessed her name through my personnel file. I did not mention Owen. I did not mention the way Adrian had looked at me when he said he was afraid I might give him a reason to want me to stay. Lily listened without interrupting, which was always more alarming than when she argued. When I finished, she set down her cereal. Do you trust him? No, does he trust you? I thought about the memory card hidden beneath the ring. I think he is trying to. That is not what I asked. I know. 2 days later, Adrian asked whether he could send a car to take me to a charity gala at the Whitmore Museum. His message arrived at 8 in the morning with 5 words. May I send the car? I stared at the screen for nearly a minute before answering yes. It should not have mattered that he remembered my rule. It did. The dress waiting inside the garment bag was dark blue, simple, and elegant without looking designed to turn me into someone else. A note from Lily explained that Marcus had asked her for my usual dress size. I had expected Adrian to choose something that transformed me into a woman who belonged beside him. Instead, the dress looked like something I might have chosen for myself if my bank account had possessed an extra zero. Adrian was waiting at the top of the marble staircase. Conversations softened when I entered. Heads turned. Phones lifted. He came down 3 steps, then stopped in front of me. May I? He asked, offering his hand. The question was so small that no one else would understand its importance. I placed my hand in his. You may. His fingers closed gently around mine. No pressure. No ownership. Only contact. You look comfortable, he said. That is the strangest compliment I have ever received. Marcus advised me not to say beautiful because it might sound rehearsed. Marcus is giving you romantic advice? Across the room, Marcus suddenly became fascinated by a sculpture. I almost smiled. Then Vanessa approached. She wore silver and moved with the confidence of someone who had never entered a room without knowing exactly where she ranked inside it. Claire, she said warmly enough for the cameras. How brave of you to come. I was told there would be coffee. Her smile tightened. There will be a great deal for you to learn tonight. Then it is fortunate that I read quickly. Adrian glanced at me. Vanessa noticed. For the next hour, she introduced me to donors, board members, and socialites whose names appeared on hospitals, libraries, and charitable foundations. Every question sounded polite until I listened carefully. Where had I studied etiquette? Had my family adjusted to the attention? Was food service physically exhausting? I answered honestly. I had learned manners from my mother. My family preferred privacy. And yes, standing for 9 hours made anyone tired, including people wearing expensive shoes. Adrian remained close, but did not rescue me. I had asked him not to. Near the end of dinner, Vanessa tapped her glass and invited everyone toward the central gallery for a presentation about the Whitmore Youth Futures Initiative. A large screen displayed smiling children, new community centers, and promises of millions of dollars in scholarships. I recognized several numbers. The previous night, after Adrian gave me access to the investigation, I had compared the Foundation's public annual report with its federal charity filings. Vanessa stood beside the screen and spoke about opportunity, dignity, and responsible leadership. Then she looked directly at me. Programs like this remind us that where a person begins does not have to determine where she ends. Several guests turned toward me. The insult wore a charitable smile. Claire understands that better than most, Vanessa continued. A server approached with a tray of red wine. Vanessa reached for a glass, turned quickly, and sent the wine across the front of my dress. Gasps moved through the gallery. The server went pale. Vanessa touched my arm. How careless. I am so sorry. The stain spread across the dark fabric beneath the museum lights. Cameras lifted. Adrian took 1 step forward. I raised my hand before he could speak. It is all right, I said. Vanessa smiled. Of course it is. I am sure someone from the service staff can help you. There it was. Not loud. Not cruel enough to create a scandal by itself. Just sharp enough to remind everyone where she believed I belonged. I looked at the presentation screen behind her. Before I leave, may I ask a question about the initiative? Vanessa hesitated. Certainly. Your annual report states that 82 cents of every donated dollar reaches students. That is correct. Then why do the federal filings show less than 41 cents reaching direct programs? The room changed. Vanessa's smile disappeared. Adrian became perfectly still. I continued before fear could catch me. The remaining money is listed under consulting, event administration, and brand development. 3 consulting firms use the same mailing address in Delaware. One was created 11 days before receiving a payment of $4 million. No one moved. The photograph of smiling children remained behind us. Vanessa glanced toward her father near the front row. You are misunderstanding complex accounting. Possibly. That is why I am asking a question rather than making an accusation. The scholarship report also lists 600 recipients, while the participating schools publicly identify only 212. A reporter lowered her phone and began typing. Another step closer. Adrian did not interrupt. He did not need to. The room that had been measuring the price of my dress was suddenly measuring every word Vanessa said. This is neither the time nor the place, she replied. You made opportunity the subject of the evening, I said. I assumed transparency was included. Silence. Heavy. Complete. Then Adrian stepped beside me. Miss Bennett's questions deserve documented answers, he said. Vanessa looked at him as though he had broken a promise made long before I entered the building. You are choosing her over the merger. I am choosing accurate numbers. He turned toward me and lowered his voice. May I take you home? I looked at the wine stain, the cameras, and the screen filled with children whose names had been turned into numbers. Not yet. What do you need? Access to the complete audit files. Adrian's eyes held mine. Something new moved through them. Not protection. Not control. Respect. He looked toward Marcus. Arrange it. Vanessa stared at me as the room filled with questions. She had expected Adrian to protect me from humiliation. She had never considered that he might need to protect her world from what I could see. A secure audit laptop and 2 sealed binders arrived at Adrian's penthouse shortly after midnight. The electronic records remained inside an encrypted data room monitored by Marcus, while the binders contained signed documents that had never been digitized. Rain pressed against the floor-to-ceiling windows, turning Manhattan into a blurred field of gold and white below us. I had changed out of the stained dress and into a borrowed sweater and black pants. They fit because Lily had given Marcus my size, but the efficiency still unsettled me. Nothing in Adrian Blackwood's world seemed accidental. You could have asked me directly, I said when I entered the library. Adrian looked up from the first binder. His tie was gone, and the top button of his white shirt was open. Without stage lights and cameras, the sharp edges of him looked tired rather than untouchable. I should have. A laptop, 2 tablets, and stacks of paper covered the long table between us. Marcus stood near the door speaking quietly into his phone while an assistant arranged coffee. Mine came with cream and 1 packet of sugar. Adrian's was black. He noticed me noticing. Marcus asked Lily while confirming that you would be staying here tonight. My coffee order became part of a security briefing. Your sister is thorough. That sounded like Lily. I sat across from him and opened the first report. The smell of coffee mixed with paper and rain. For the next several hours, Marcus's financial security specialist cross-referenced vendor records while I compared names, dates, and addresses across the charity and retirement accounts. The missing money was not hidden in one dramatic transfer. It moved in small amounts through ordinary categories. Consulting fees, vendor adjustments, event expenses, numbers designed to look boring enough that no one would ask questions. I began marking repeated company officers and mailing addresses. Adrian watched my notes spread across the table. The Whitmore Foundation might not be the source, I said. It may be one of several channels. Explain. The same consulting firms appear in Blackwood retirement accounts and Whitmore charity reports. Money leaves both organizations, passes through separate vendors, then arrives at companies controlled by overlapping directors. Adrian leaned closer to the screen, but did not touch me. Owen serves on the financial committee for both organizations. So does Vanessa's father. His expression darkened. He designed the merger proposal. Then the merger might not be about expanding the company. Combining the accounting systems could make the original transfers harder to trace. Adrian studied the pattern. How certain are you? Certain enough to request a full independent audit. Not certain enough to accuse anyone of a crime. You had no difficulty questioning Vanessa tonight. I asked her to explain public numbers. I did not deliver a verdict. A faint smile touched his face. She did not understand the difference. Powerful people often confuse questions with disrespect. The smile disappeared. Is that what I do? I met his eyes. Rain tapped steadily against the glass. Sometimes. He looked back at the report. You are the first person who has said that directly. That does not mean I am the first person who noticed. The words landed between us. Adrian closed the file and stood. For a moment, I thought he was ending the conversation. Instead, he walked to the windows and placed both hands in his pockets. His reflection floated over the city lights. My father believed respect and fear were the same thing, he said. Every employee stood when he entered a room. Every executive agreed before he finished speaking. He considered that loyalty. What did you consider it? Efficient. I waited. Then I watched the same people divide his authority among themselves before his funeral was over. He turned toward me. Fear lasts only while the person causing it remains in the room. This was the first time he had spoken about his family without sounding as though he were reading from a company history. How old were you? I asked. 24. That is young to take control of a company this large. I did not simply inherit control. I spent years winning it back from the board. And now you believe control is the only reason they have not taken it again. Control is measurable. Trust is not. Exactly. I closed the laptop. That does not make control better. It only makes it easier for you. His jaw tightened, but he did not argue. The heating system clicked off. Silence settled across the penthouse. It was strange how such a large place could feel empty. No photographs stood on the tables. No books had cracked spines. The furniture looked chosen by someone who expected rooms to be photographed, but never lived in. Where is your family? I asked. Gone. That is not an answer. It is the only one I usually give. He returned to the table and gathered several folders. One slipped from his hand. Papers scattered across the floor. I knelt to help before he could stop me. A photograph slid beneath a cabinet near the wall. I reached for it and saw a woman standing beside a much younger Adrian in front of a modest brick building. He could not have been older than 16. He was smiling. Actually smiling. The woman beside him had one hand on his shoulder and the other around a cardboard box filled with books. On the back, someone had written, Evelyn and Adrian, first day at the new office. Your mother? I asked. Adrian took the photograph from my hand too quickly. Yes. She looked kind. His face closed. We should continue tomorrow. He moved toward the hallway with the photograph still in his hand. I followed far enough to see him stop beside a dark wooden door at the end of the corridor. It was the only door in the penthouse with an old-fashioned brass lock. He opened it, stepped inside, and left it partly ajar. Warm yellow light spilled across the floor. I should have turned away. Instead, I saw shelves filled with books, framed photographs, and small objects that did not belong in the polished emptiness outside. A knitted scarf, a chipped blue mug, a stack of handwritten letters tied with ribbon. This room was not designed. It was remembered. Adrian emerged and found me standing there. His expression changed instantly. You should not be here. I followed you because you walked away while we were speaking. Do not enter this room. I did not. Then please leave the hallway. The sharpness in his voice made me step back, but anger followed my surprise. You do not get to speak to me as though I am one of your employees. This is private. So was my human resources file. He froze. I continued before I could lose courage. You search through everyone else's life, Adrian. You collect their weaknesses, their debts, and their fears. Then the moment someone sees one honest piece of you, you close a door and call it protection. You know nothing about this room. Because you keep everyone outside and punish them for not knowing you. His face went still. Not cold. Hurt. The difference was small, but I saw it. He looked toward the open door. My mother died in the office this room recreates, he said. The anger left me. I am sorry. The original building was sold after her death. I rebuilt the room from photographs and stored everything she left behind here. He held the photograph at his side. She was the only person in my family who believed a company should serve the people who built it. My father called her sentimental. After she died, he dismantled most of the programs she created. The retirement fund. She helped establish it. The missing money suddenly felt personal in a way numbers had not allowed. Then whoever is taking that money is not only stealing from employees. They are erasing the last part of her work that survived my father. Adrian opened. If the current transfers grew out of an older scheme, the first pattern may be here. He handed me a box marked confidential compliance records. I lifted the lid. The top folder contained a list of outside auditors from 11 years earlier. I read the first page once. Then again. My hands began to tremble. Halfway down the list was a name I had not seen printed on company paper since I was 16. Daniel Bennett. My father. I looked at Adrian, but he was already watching me. Why is my father's name in your mother's private files? I asked. Adrian did not answer immediately. In that silence, I understood that the engagement was not the first secret connecting our families. Adrian had recognized my father's name before I opened the file, and the truth in his silence broke something the contract never could. How long have you known? I asked. The recreated office seemed to shrink around us. Rain traced silver lines down the windows. Adrian stood beside the steel cabinet, still enough to look carved from the shadows. I recognized the name after Marcus completed the background review. Before the press conference. Yes. One word. Clean. Controlled. Cruel because it was honest. I closed the folder with both hands. You knew our families were connected, and you still made me part of your plan without telling me. I knew your father's accounting firm had worked for Blackwood Global. I did not know why his contract ended until I found the correspondence in this room tonight. You knew enough to ask. Yes. But you chose not to. He looked toward his mother's desk. I was afraid the connection might make you refuse before I could protect you. That was my decision to make. Yes. He did not try to soften it. Your father discovered irregular transfers from the Employee Retirement Fund 11 years ago. My mother supported his request for a broader audit. My father terminated the contract with Daniel's firm, pressured other companies not to hire him, and convinced the board that his concerns were unreliable. The room tilted beneath me. I remembered my father sitting at our kitchen table after losing his work, surrounded by unopened letters and legal documents. I remembered people calling him difficult, bitter, obsessed. I remembered believing, for one terrible year, that perhaps they were right. He told the truth. I whispered, yes. And your father destroyed his reputation. Adrian did not defend his family. Yes. That answer hurt more than an excuse. I picked up the folder and stepped toward the door. Claire, those records need to remain protected until Marcus can create verified copies. You agreed that I could leave. I did. He stopped himself before saying anything more. Then he moved away from the doorway. Marcus will document the transfer and provide you with a certified copy. You may leave as soon as that is complete. It was the first time he chose procedure over control when fear would have given him an excuse to do otherwise. I noticed. It did not make me forgive him. By morning, I had removed the ring and returned it inside the velvet box. By noon, Owen had leaked an early draft of the relationship agreement to several news organizations. The headlines called me a paid fiancé, a disgruntled employee, and a barista who had calculated her way into a billionaire's private life. Commentators discussed my student debt as though owing money were evidence of dishonesty. Owen then called for an emergency review by the board's independent audit committee and arranged a public shareholder briefing afterward. He expected me to disappear. Adrian's attorneys expected me to remain silent until they prepared a statement. I did neither. I agreed to testify before the audit committee on the condition that the session be recorded and released to shareholders once confidential employee information was removed. 2 days later, I entered the company auditorium wearing my old black cafe uniform and the name badge Adrian had kept on his desk. The board committee sat at a long table beneath the company seal. Shareholder representatives and legal observers filled the first rows. Reporters waited behind a barrier at the back of the room for the public portion of the session. Owen stood near a large screen, calm and polished, while the leaked draft agreement appeared behind him. Adrian waited at the opposite end of the table. He looked exhausted, but he did not ask me to stand beside him. He had finally learned. Miss Bennett, Owen said, did Adrian Blackwood offer you money to pretend to be his fiancée? Yes. The room filled with the sound of keyboards. Adrian did not move. Did you accept that payment? No. The compensation clause was removed before I signed the final agreement. I placed the executed copy on the evidence table. I accepted paid protective leave, access to information affecting my decisions, and written job protection for 47 hourly employees during the investigation. Owen's smile weakened. You still participated in a public deception. Yes. I turned toward Adrian. He also used my fear, my family information, and records I had not given him permission to review. He withheld a connection between our fathers because he believed he knew what was best for me. That was wrong. A murmur moved through the auditorium. Adrian held my gaze. It was, he said. Owen stared at him. You are admitting misconduct? I am accepting responsibility for my decisions. For the first time, Adrian's power did not come from controlling the room. It came from refusing to hide. I opened my father's file and explained how the old audit matched the current transfer patterns. Marcus authenticated the independent security archive. A forensic accounting firm retained by the audit committee confirmed that the vendors I identified shared addresses, officers, and banking intermediaries. The records did not prove every allegation yet, but they established enough evidence for a formal investigation. Vanessa's father demanded that the public briefing be canceled. The committee refused. Owen called the documents incomplete. I agreed. Incomplete evidence is not useless evidence, I said. It is a reason to keep investigating instead of approving a merger that would make the accounts harder to trace. Then the committee presented the final document recovered from Evelyn Blackwood's archive. It was a signed memorandum from 11 years earlier identifying a consulting company linked to Owen, who had been a financial controller at the time. Owen had not invented the original scheme, but the records suggested that he had expanded it after Adrian's father died and trusted that the old cover-up would protect him. The committee froze payments to the questioned vendors, suspended the merger vote, and referred the records to federal investigators. Owen was placed on administrative leave before the meeting ended. Resigning the following week did not erase the evidence. Adrian also stepped down from his position while the independent review continued. No one forced him to do it. He said a leader who demanded accountability could not decide that accountability applied only to other people. The investigation lasted 10 months. The company restored employee retirement balances in stages using insurance proceeds, recovered vendor funds, and a contribution from Adrian's personal holdings. My father's professional record was formally corrected. Blackwood Global issued a public apology to his accounting firm and reached a settlement with our family after an independent mediator reviewed the evidence. I completed my forensic accounting program and joined the advisory board of a new employee protection office established outside the company's executive structure. Lily returned to school without reporters waiting outside our building. Blackwood Global survived. More importantly, the people inside it did too. Adrian did not call me during those 10 months. He sent no flowers, no gifts, no messages asking me to reconsider. When investigators requested information, he provided it through my attorney. When reporters asked about me, he said only that I had acted with courage and that I owed him nothing. Distance was the first promise he kept without asking for credit. One rainy morning, almost a year after the auditorium hearing, I visited the old lobby cafe before work. Adrian stood in line wearing a plain navy coat. No driver waited at the curb. No assistants cleared the room. He remained behind 6 other customers and waited for his turn. When he reached the counter, I placed a paper cup in front of him. Black coffee, his name written carefully across the side. Beneath it, I added 2 words. Ask me. He read them, then looked up. Claire Bennett. Would you have dinner with me? No cameras. No contract. No ring. Just a question. One dinner, I said. No private investigators. Agreed. No deciding what is best for me before asking. Agreed. And you pay for the coffee. He almost smiled. That may be the most difficult condition. One dinner became a second, then a third. Adrian never arrived without asking whether the time worked for me. He listened when I said no. He returned to Blackwood Global only as a non-executive advisor after the board adopted stronger oversight rules, and he spent more time helping rebuild his mother's employee programs than restoring his old title. He met Lily over breakfast and allowed her to question him for nearly 2 hours. He apologized without explaining why I should forgive him. Trust did not return in one dramatic moment. It returned in ordinary ones. A door held open without expectation. A question asked before a decision. A disagreement that ended without punishment. A year after our first real dinner, Adrian returned to the cafe before sunrise. He carried a velvet box, but kept it closed on the counter between us. I once put a ring in your hand before I gave you a choice, he said. I will not make that mistake again. Then he asked. He waited through my silence without touching the box. When I finally said yes, he still did not move until I held out my hand. Adrian had once believed love meant keeping someone close enough that she could never leave. I taught him that love meant leaving the door open. He taught me that a person could inherit a legacy of control and still choose to become gentler than the world that shaped him. He had ruled every room he entered. In the end, the greatest proof of his love was not that he chose me in front of everyone. It was that, when no one else was watching, he waited for my answer.